Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine stepping into the heart of 17th century France, a world where power was stitched into gold-threaded gowns, where a single flick of a noble woman's fan could make or break an alliance, and where beauty wasn't just an expectation, it was a weapon. Now open your eyes. You're standing in the glittering halls of the Palace of Versailles. Golden walls reflect candlelight like divine fire. Ceilings are painted with us and angels dancing among the clouds. Persian rugs stretch endlessly beneath your feet. Courtiers in embroidered coats and powdered wigs glide past noblewomen in gowns so wide they require doorways to be rebuilt. It is breathtaking. But then you breathe in, and the illusion shatters. A stench heavy, sickly, inescapable hits you like a wave. A grotesque mixture of perfumed sweat, human waste, rotting meat mildew, and something else. Something that smells like beauty slowly decaying. This was Versailles, the pinnacle of power, opulence, and elegance, built on filth, fear, and female suffering. Today we peel back the silk curtains and descend into the 5 darkest, most disturbing truths about life as a royal woman at the height of French power. Because beneath the gold, Versailles rotted. 1. Bathing was dangerous, immoral, and unnecessary. In our world, cleanliness is comfort. It's routine. A warm bath, a refreshing shower. These are moments of peace. In 17th century Versailles, they were moments of madness. Back then, doctors genuinely believed that warm water was dangerous. It opened the pores, they said, letting disease seep in from the foul air. The church agreed, calling baths a gateway to sin and lust. Cleanliness of the flesh was associated with spiritual corruption. So the royal solution: don't bathe at all. There were no private bathrooms, no showers, and very few tubs. A full body wash might happen once or twice a year, if that, and when it did, it was often a communal event. The men went first, followed by boys, and only then the women. By the time a lady entered the tub, the water was cold, cloudy, greasy, and filled with skin residue. Sometimes there was barely any water left. So most royal women resorted to dry washing, wiping their faces, necks, and hands with cloths moistened, not with water, but with alcohol, vinegar, or even saliva. Water was viewed as suspicious. Soap was rarely used. Skin was never fully cleansed. Their bodies went untouched by water for months at a time, yet they were powdered, perfumed, and dressed like goddesses. From afar, they were angels of grace. Up close, they smelled like death wrapped in lace. 2. Toilets. Try a chamber pot and a prayer. Versailles was a palace of over 700 rooms, but indoor plumbing almost non-existent. There were almost no proper toilets. Instead, everyone noble's guests, even royalty, used chamber pots. These were porcelain or brass bowls kept under beds or behind curtains. You relieved yourself, and then someone, usually a servant, threw the contents out the window. If the wind was wrong or someone was walking below, too bad. Some men didn't even bother with pots. They urinated off balconies and hallways or right into palace gardens. Versailles, for all its golden beauty, was a giant public bathroom in disguise. And women had to learn how to walk through marble corridors, lifting their skirts, not to flirt, but to avoid stepping in feces. Eventually, in 1715, the king issued a formal decree that palace corridors should be cleaned once a week. Once a week, that was the improvement. And as for toilet paper, it didn't exist. People used scraps of fabric, leaves, hay, or in desperation, their own hands. Hand washing was rare. Hygiene was mythical. No wonder disease thrived. No wonder parasites reigned. 3. Hairstyles to heaven in colonies of lice. A royal woman's hair was her crown and sometimes her prison. The bigger, the better. Hairstyles soared over a foot high, sculpted into works of art. Miniature ships, flower gardens, bird cages, even battle scenes. To build these gravity-defying structures, women used wireframes, horsehair, cotton padding, and finally pomade made from animal fat, usually beef tallow. Then they powdered it white with flower lavender and crushed bone. And then they didn't touch it for weeks. They slept with it, ate with it, entertained with it. They did not wash their real hair. They didn't remove their wigs. They simply added more powder and more perfume. It was a perfect paradise for lice. Lice infestations were so common they were expected. Entire colonies thrived inside the curls and wax and wool. Women used long, ornate silver lice scratchers tools designed to reach into the hair and relieve the itch without ruining the hairstyle. Yes, women brought lice claws to dinner parties. Yes, they scratched their scalps between sips of wine. Some wigs became so heavy they caused chronic neck pain. Others caught fire from nearby candles. But no woman dared appear out of fashion because in Versailles, looking outdated meant social death. Better lice than disgrace. 4. Banquets of worms and rot. You'd think that if Versailles could do anything right, it would be food. After all, this was the center of French gastronomy. Tables overflowed with roasted swans, sugared fruits, rare cheeses, and wines aged to perfection. Banquets stretched for hours with dozens of dishes prepared for every occasion. But the palace kitchens, a nightmare. There was no refrigeration. Raw sewage often leaked into kitchen spaces. Rats and flies were constant companions. Meat spoiled in the heat. Fruit was left out for days. And still the chefs had to prepare meals fit for a king. The result? Parasites. Diarrhea and vomiting were common. Infections rampant. Even the mighty Louis XIV wasn't spared. He reportedly passed a 6-inch tapeworm, the result of undercooked meat and contaminated food. Royal women, of course, had to endure all of this in silence. At banquets, they were expected to smile, flirt, laugh, and nibble daintily, even as their stomachs cramped and twisted in pain. To show discomfort was to show weakness. To refuse a dish was to offend the host. So they swallowed their food, their nausea, and their dignity. 5. Childbirth, a national spectacle of pain. Of all the horrors, none were more deeply invasive than childbirth. For royal women, giving birth was not intimate, it was not sacred, it was not personal. It was a public event. When a queen or noblewoman went into labor, dozens of people, priests, doctors, midwives, nobles, even courtiers crowded into her bedchamber to watch. Why? Because people feared the baby might be swapped. If a stillborn child was born, someone might try to replace it with a living one. If it was a girl, they feared the queen might switch it for a boy. So every royal birth was witnessed like a courtroom trial, but with screaming and blood. Queen Marie-Therese gave birth in front of over 200 people. Marie Antoinette fainted after giving birth due to the overwhelming heat and the sheer number of people pressed into her room. There was no anesthesia, no sterilized tools, no privacy, no mercy. Many mothers died of infection days after delivery because doctors didn't wash their hands. The child might survive. The nation might rejoice. But the woman, she would be left broken, scarred, or worse, forgotten. Behind the gowns, the true cost of being royal. So what did it mean to be a royal woman in Versailles? It meant living inside a perfume prison, gilded with gold but rotting beneath the surface. It meant carrying the unbearable weight of expectation of beauty, of silence, even when your body ached with worms and your scalp crawled with lice. It meant smiling with cracked lips and infected teeth. It meant bleeding in front of an audience. It meant being worshipped like a goddess, while being treated like a possession. Versailles teaches us something profound. Power is not always glorious. Sometimes it stinks. Sometimes the crown is just a symbol of how much pain you're willing to endure while keeping your mouth shut. So next time you see a painting of a royal lady in silk and diamonds, remember, behind the powder, the pearls, and the poise, there may have been a woman who hadn't touched water in a year, who hadn't had a moment alone since puberty, and who never got to say enough. So what do we truly learn from the dazzling halls and rotting chambers of Versailles? That beauty can be a prison. That luxury doesn't always mean dignity, and that behind the grandest gowns and most gilded crowns are often women who were silenced, scrutinized, and stripped of their humanity. They smiled for portraits, but they never got to scream when it hurt. They wore diamonds, but carried burdens that glitter couldn't hide. They were icons, but not always free. Versailles was never just a palace. It was a mirror reflecting the cost of power when power forgets compassion. And maybe the real lesson isn't just historical. Maybe it's a reminder that in every era we must look beyond appearances, that elegance without empathy is just another mask, and that true progress begins when we choose to honor the human beneath the crown. Because history isn't only about kings and empires. Sometimes it's about the quiet suffering of the women no one bothered to listen to but who deserve to be heard.